My name is Drew Schradel. I'm the Director of Admission at Cornell College. And I'm really excited about these next three sessions that we have tonight, next week, and the week after. We'll talk a little bit about that, about the presentation. Because I think there are three things that really we get to cover as admission professionals to help out students and to help you understand some of the things that could be a little confusing, especially this year, a little bit better. So what does test optional really mean? Well, these are the questions we're going to be asked tonight. What does test optional really mean? How will I be assessed with test optional? Will it hurt my scholarship chances? What if I take the test after I get accepted and I think it's good? And what are some tips for having a good test optional application? All very good questions, and questions we get quite often in our admission office as far as being test optional or not. So what does test optional really mean? So at Cornell College, it means that it's entirely your choice, right? So we have two different applications. You have your standard application, the one that I think most people, if your parents were college graduates, or you have siblings that were college graduates, they're going to know what the standard application is, right? Your GPA, your test score, pretty basic stuff. And then we have our test optional or a no test application, right? So test optional is kind of the school term. The application is no test in the sense that you will not send a test score in at all. So it's your choice to choose which application you want. Some schools are test blind. And so these are type of schools that don't want to see a test score at all, right? So they do not require the test score. In fact, they don't want the test score. They are purely, you send in your transcript and that's it. The test optional option, again, really just gives you the option. You get to choose. So for many of you, you may have taken an ACT already and said, hey, I'm pretty proud of this ACT. I'd like to apply with that. That's totally fine. Some of you may be like, you know what, I haven't taken it, or I'm a little afraid to take it with COVID and stuff. And that's totally fine. That's really what this is all about. I do have a couple of things in there. Most schools are test optional right now in the country. A lot of schools have switched over very, very quickly. Cornell has been test optional for a little over 5 years. I will talk a little bit more about that later. But I would encourage you not to drive 400 miles for a test score. Believe it or not, I have heard multiple people, other admission professionals, admission directors, talk about how they've heard students and families are driving 400 plus miles just to take an ACT or an SAT. You know, if the dream school is only accepting a test score, I totally understand that, but I would encourage you to think about it, right? Is it worth driving 400 miles for a test score? Are you going to be on your A game by the time you take that? And finally, test optional does not mean it is less selective or negative application. I hear this a lot too. Students sometimes waver about, oh no, I don't really want to do test optional. I took the test score, and is it really going to be seen the same way? Yes. If we're test optional, we truly mean that if you apply without a test score, we don't care if you've taken the test. You could have gotten a 1. I don't even know if that's possible, but you could have gotten a 1, and we are not going to look at that, right? Test optional truly means that if you apply with no test score, that's fine. We're giving you that option. So how will I be assessed with test optional? So this is a great question. And unfortunately, it varies in every different institution that you might apply to. Most schools are going to look at it holistically, right? So we are not going to look at your application as just a GPA, right? GPA and transcript are going to have pretty big weights in that because we don't really have another way of being able to assess your academics and your skill sets. But your transcript, your writing sample are going to be probably the most important, but it's going to be everything else too. Did you do an admission interview? Have you done different things in terms of volunteering opportunities? Have you taken advantage of different clubs, organizations? Do you have a job? Are you involved with your family? There's a lot of different things there. So with test optional, we're really looking holistically at your application and trying to see everything that brings you to the school and why you'd be a good fit. So an admission interview is something I encourage. It's a chance for you to get to know the admission counselor really well, and really, even better, for us to get to know you. That's a huge step because when we go into the application readings portion, we want to get to know you a little bit better. And if you're just a name and an application, doesn't mean we don't get to know you, but it's a little bit harder to have those subtle nuances that when you have that conversation, or you get to meet over Zoom, or even on campus, that we might miss, right? At Cornell, you'll be assessed on two additional small writing samples we have as well. One being about your fit, so some small questions, nothing over 500 words, and one about your motivation. And these are simple questions, such as, if you had to read a chapter about me in a book, what would be that chapter? Talk about a time that you overcame something difficult. Sort of the cliche questions that you'd probably get anyway, but we do have those couple of additional writing questions, and we can help you answer those. Will it hurt my scholarship chances? No, at most places. So I'm going to talk from a Cornell perspective here. Test optional or no test will not hurt your scholarship chances at Cornell College or most other places. They are completely separate ways of applying and looking at the app, right? So again, we are not saying if you apply test optional and we have another student who applied with a test score and they had a 35 and a 4.0 and you had a 3.8 but a really great application, well, this person has a test score, so this person gets priority. That's just not the case. Again, every application is unique. And especially in smaller schools, you're going to see that applications are seen as more unique pieces of form versus kind of just putting everything all in together. And so it will not hurt your scholarship chances, especially at Cornell College. Many times it actually helps your chances. So in cases, especially this year, where you may not have been able to take the ACT or the SAT, you may have taken it, but you weren't happy with it, and now you can't take it again. I know plenty of people who have signed up to take it multiple times, and it's been canceled. Um, or it just may not be your thing. You just may not be a standardized test taker, and that's fine. But that's what test optional is there for, is to fill in that gap, to be able to have you apply and not have to worry about, oh man, how do I go? How do I do a test score? How do I get through an ACT or an SAT in a hotel gathering space to make sure that I can take the test? And so a lot of times, again, it helps your chances. That's why a conversation with your admission officer, wherever you choose to apply, and Cornell is open to that, is a great way to making sure that you apply the right way. Now, again, this is not the same anywhere. And so I will kind of give you some ethical or some moral issues that I have a little bit. And that's that this year with COVID-19, many schools have switched to test optional. Some schools have switched to test optional for just admission. Some schools have switched to test optional for admission and scholarship. Again, Cornell is for both. You are no test for both scholarship and admission. But you will need to make sure you ask the individual schools you're applying to as to whether or not they are only test optional for admission or for admission and scholarship and aid. There are some schools that have determined that they are going to do it only for admission and still require test scores for aid. I would imagine that some of those schools will change that policy, but with a lot of schools switching over to test optional for the first time just this year in response to the lack of testing due to COVID, there are a lot of questions and a lot of concerns in the air. And so that's why I encourage you to ask, because I don't want you to not be able to get the proper scholarships you need. But do know that many schools, again, including Cornell, are offering scholarship and admission based on your application. There are no reasons to take the test whatsoever. That includes placement as well. If you have questions, reminder, Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, I believe. So you can definitely put some questions in there. We will have some time for questions at the end. So what if I take my test and after I'm accepted? So this is to the, if I'm really happy about it. So at Cornell, we will not accept the test score. We are truly optional. And so if you apply with no test score, then that will be it. We will not say, oh, now you've taken the test. Well, now you've bettered yourself, right? So we really want you to choose from the very beginning. If you want to apply with a test score, totally fine. That would be how you apply. If you want to apply with no test score, that's totally fine as well. But That's where our office comes into play, and your specific admission representative will really help because they'll be able to guide you in which way they think is the best option for you. We really want to help you get as much scholarship as possible. So we won't try to steer you in the wrong way. We will try to help you figure that out. Again, this is really meant to help because we don't want you to worry about having to take a test score. We want you to be accepted and have all the accolades and all the opportunity that any other student would have who may have a test score, but you just don't. Totally fine. Again, test scores could be used at other institutions differently. Some schools are requiring test score for, again, not only scholarship, but sometimes placement in honors programs or other things like that. And so essentially, I want to make sure you're informed that that is a possibility. But most schools, again, especially smaller schools, are likely going to be completionist in your test optional or your no test application. Just a little bit of Cornell info as well. Specifically, we're open for on-campus visits. All of our staff has openings to go over your app with you over Zoom. We're here to help you. Again, our goal is to get you accepted and to get you a scholarship and get you all that information. So we're here to help you. We've been test optional for over 5 years. So we're not in a situation where we're trying to just switch over to test optional. We've been here, we've been around the block for quite some time. And so we really know what we're doing. In fact, we've changed a few things this past year to even make test optional more accessible for every student and to make the process a little bit easier. All right, I know that was pretty quick, but I wanted to give you a quick overview. We did record this, so you're more than welcome to watch this again. If you have questions, though, admission at Cornell College .edu is a great place to send your questions. You can apply at cornellcollege.edu/apply and visit at Cornell College .edu. Again, we have on-campus visits right now.